Okay, we're going to talk about a topic that is moving, well, literally faster than any rocket. We're talking about how space is transforming right before our eyes from this kind of final frontier idea into the next critical layer of our planet's infrastructure. So, yeah, let's dive right in. So here's what we've got lined up. First, we'll look at one absolutely wild, record-breaking week that just shows you the scale of what's going on up there. Then we'll dive into this new space gold rush, what that's all about. After that, we'll tackle the big problem. The rules are old, and they're not keeping up. But there's hope. We'll look at a huge global summit that could actually change things. And finally, we'll wrap up by asking the big question. What does our future in orbit really look like?
All right, first up. To really get a handle on just how urgent this is, we just have to look at one specific week back in May of 2025. It perfectly captures this whole new reality.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The sheer pace it's just incredible. We're talking 4 successful rocket launches from 4 totally different places, all packed into about 6.5 hours. You've got China launching their satellites, SpaceX launching not 1, but 2 batches of Starlinks, and then ULA setting up satellites for Amazon's Kuiper project. This isn't some weird fluke or a special occasion. No, this is a snapshot of the new normal.
And that right there is the key idea. You have to understand, these are not just cool science experiments anymore. Nope. Every single one of these launches is basically laying another brick, another building block, in a whole new layer of infrastructure that's literally wrapping around our entire planet. And it's going to impact everything. I mean everything, from the internet on your phone to global security.
So you can see how this starts to build into something much, much bigger. This explosion of activity is being called a new kind of gold rush. It's a race for dominance in what's known as low Earth orbit, or LEO. And you can think of LEO as the most valuable real estate there is, just above our heads.
And listen, that phrase, gold rush, it's not just some catchy headline. Law professor Joanna Kulesa puts it perfectly. It is a modern race for dominance. It's pretty simple, really. The countries and the companies that can launch satellites the fastest, well, they're the ones grabbing control of these super valuable orbital highways and communication frequencies.
Okay, to put this into perspective, let's just look at the raw numbers. In 2024 alone, just 1 year, we put over 2,500 new objects into orbit. That is a staggering amount of new traffic up there. And believe me, it's just the beginning.
But here's where it gets really, really dramatic. The European Space Agency thinks that number it could hit 50,000 by 2050. Think about that. We are watching exponential growth in real time. And this giant orbital traffic jam that's forming, it has massive consequences for literally everyone, even for countries that have never, ever launched a rocket.
Okay, so with all this stuff flying around, who's directing traffic? And that question gets us right to the heart of the problem. We are in the middle of a 21st century space race, but we're trying to manage it with a 20th century rulebook.
And as you can see, there is no single coordinated game plan, not even close. In the US, you've got the FCC really pushing a commercial-first approach. Meanwhile, China is building a national system where the private sector works hand in glove with the government. And then you have Europe, which is trying to create its own collective digital independence with big projects like IRIS². So you've got 3 major powers, all with 3 totally different strategies.
The big issue here is that the international rules, the ones managed by the UN's International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, they were never designed for this kind of chaos. They're basically built on a first-come, first-served idea. Whoever gets there first gets to claim the best spots, the best frequencies, which could totally lock out anyone who comes later. Plus, there's no real way to enforce these rules, and any attempt to change them just moves way too slowly.
So what are we left with? Well, it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. A messy, dangerous patchwork of outdated rules trying to govern an orbit that's getting more and more congested every single day. It is, frankly, a recipe for chaos and conflict.
But it's not all doom and gloom. There is actually a really critical opportunity coming up. A chance to try and fix this. A moment where the world can actually come together and try to shape what the future of space governance looks like.
And that opportunity is the WSIS+20 Summit. The best way to think about it is like a constitutional convention, but for our planet's digital infrastructure. It's being organized by the UN and the ITU, and it's where global leaders are going to meet to try and set the rules for the next generation of tech, not just on the ground, but also, and this is so crucial, in orbit.
And you better believe the agenda is absolutely massive.
I mean, they're asking the big questions. How do we manage the radio spectrum so all these thousands of satellites aren't just screaming over each other? How do we govern these giant constellations that fly over every country on Earth? And maybe most importantly, how do we make sure this amazing new infrastructure helps everybody, instead of just becoming a monopoly controlled by a handful of powerful companies or countries?
The only way to really solve this is with something called a multi-stakeholder model. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Governments can't figure this out on their own. They just can't. You absolutely have to bring everyone to the table. The companies actually building the tech, the university experts studying the impacts, and the groups that represent all of us, the public.
So let's bring it all back down to Earth. What does all this actually mean for us? Well, as we look ahead to our future in orbit, it's no exaggeration to say the stakes could not be any higher.
And really, we're at a fork in the road. On one path, the promise is just incredible, right? We're talking true global internet access, better education for kids in remote places, amazing tools for monitoring our environment, and faster responses to natural disasters. But the other path, the risk of getting this wrong, well, that looks like a Wild West in orbit. Chaos, monopolies controlling everything, a sky full of dangerous space junk, and maybe even conflict.
And so that leaves us with one final, absolutely crucial question. The technology, it's already here. The rockets are launching literally every day. The real challenge, the real race now, is about governance. So what's it going to be? Are we going to build a shared digital highway in the sky for everyone? Or are we heading for a Wild West in the stars? The decisions that are being made right now, they're the ones that will decide.